Hope and Liam's wedding began like a dream stitched together through a series of cracks, in soft yellow light, trembling background music, and blessings that tried to hide the heavy premonitions that no one dared to speak out loud. Hope stood in her white wedding dress, her smile as fragile as a thread stretched between lies and longing, and Liam looked at her with eyes full of trust, believing that after all, they had chosen each other, had closed the past. But at that moment, there was a strange movement at the end of the hall, a whisper like a stray wind, and everything stopped as if time had been cut in two. The door swung open, and Luna, whom everyone believed was in prison, walked in, her hair tangled, her eyes burning, like a ghost tearing through the festive space. Her appearance was a knife to the heart of the ceremony, and in that moment, all smiles turned to stone. Luna stepped forward, her steps off-key amid the wedding music, which abruptly changed to cold noise, and her announcement rang out like a curse. Hope had asked her to kill Steffi. Gasps filled the room. Someone dropped a wine glass shattered, and gasps filled the air. No one could believe it. But Luna's eyes, the tension on her face, and her faint smile cut through the wedding pretense like a knife, making her words ring true in the cruelest way. Luna didn't stop there, her voice cold as rusted iron, that the plan to kill Steffi had failed, but Hope wasn't done yet. She also revealed another secret. Hope had been having an affair with Finn. Those words were like thunder in the middle of the wedding. All eyes turned to Hope, and in an instant, her face was as white as a sheet. Steffi stood motionless, her lips moving without making a sound, her hands shaking as if she were trying to find a place to hold on to the crumbling reality. Every laugh, every cheer, every congratulatory kiss suddenly felt so fake it was nauseating. No one could say anything, because the silence was a verdict. When Luna continued to reveal that Hope's baby wasn't Liam's but Finn's, the room erupted. Steffi stepped back, her eyes glistening with tears, but no more fell. She couldn't cry, because the emotion had overtaken her, turned into a violent shock. Memories played back like a film reel in her head, Finn's late nights, the anonymous texts, Hope's hazy eyes, the times they accidentally met in the hospital hallway. All the fragments came together to form a single picture, a betrayal hidden behind fake smiles. Hope wanted to speak, but her throat was tight. Each heartbeat was a hammering in her chest. She knew this moment would come. She just didn't think it would come so soon. The marriage she'd built so hastily, the child she'd tried to hide, and the guilt of Finn. All of it fell like dominoes. Luna, once the victim, now the punisher. Her words weren't just the truth. They were sharpened weapons aimed straight at Hope's heart. Steffi lunged at Hope, but was stopped by Deke and Rich. Without words, everything in Steffi's eyes was clear. Hatred, contempt, and an irreparable pain. Finn, standing between the two women who had defined his life, suddenly became living proof of a tragedy he had created. He knew the baby was his. He knew that night, the night he thought was just a moment of weakness, had left an indelible mark. But he never expected Hope to use that baby to rebuild her life, to marry Liam, to pretend to be happy. Liam looked at Hope, his eyes no longer filled with love, but complete devastation. He saw everything crumble, from trust to honor. He remembered every touch, every promise, every morning she told him she loved him, and now it was all a series of lies. Hope bowed her head, tears falling, but she knew no one would believe those tears anymore. She was in turmoil, between her true love for Finn and her fear of losing Liam, between her desire to be a mother and her guilt as a betrayer, between her survival instinct and her self-destruction. Luna, who had caused the storm, watched the chaos with a bitter smile. She didn't need anyone to believe her. She just had to speak, and the world collapsed on itself. She had been controlled, pushed to the brink, used as a tool, and now she was giving it all back. She spoke not to save herself, but to destroy those who thought they could control everything. And in the flash of the camera, the image of Hope, the bride collapsed in her wedding dress, tears mingling with her makeup, became a symbol of an indelible tragedy. The police appeared, blue and red lights reflecting off the floor of broken glasses and dead flowers. Luna was restrained, but she did not resist. She looked straight at Hope and said with a single look, "The truth has been told." She didn't need to say more because it was too late. Hope was pushed back into a corner, the crowd avoiding her like a poisonous fire. Steffi turned and walked out of the auditorium, leaving Finn standing between two worlds, one of his wife who had just lost faith, the other of his lover who was collapsing. There was nothing he could say to fix it. That night, after everyone had left, Hope sat alone in the ruins. The wedding flowers were scattered, the chairs and tables were tilted, and the wedding ring lay scattered on the floor, reflecting the faint light from the last remaining candle. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the small life inside, and understood that from now on, nothing would be the same. She was no longer Hope, the woman of light, but Hope, the one carrying the child of Sin. In another corner, Steffi stepped outside, the cold air hitting her face like a knife. She didn't know whether to hate Hope, hate Finn, or hate herself for believing. Only one question lingered in her mind: how to love again when trust was killed on someone else's wedding day. Finn followed her, but each step only made the distance between them grow longer. Luna was taken away in a police car, but a small smile remained on her lips. She had done what everyone feared, told the truth. And that truth burned everything, from love to honor, from trust to the future. When the dawn light crept through the window, the room still smelled of smoke and wedding perfume. Hope's dress was left behind, scorched at the hem, evidence of a promise burned. Among the dead flowers, a pregnancy test was half buried in ash, the red lines still faint. A haunting, cold image, but it said it all. That small life was the result of passion, betrayal, and punishment. And the final question echoes in the silence: if the truth can kill love, is there any lie strong enough to save humanity? The wave of rumors spread like a sonic boom through the wedding church. Hope was handcuffed in front of everyone, and the sweet air became so thick and heavy that no one could breathe. The light reflected off her pale face, her hair falling like a curtain to hide the utter collapse of someone who once believed she could control everything. The sound of police boots echoed between the sobs and tears of the guests. Liam stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the woman he once believed was the soul of his life, but now saw only a stranger, someone who had deceived him with the love he had protected for so many years. He could no longer feel his heart beating, only a cold, dry void where his trust had just been shot into 1,000 pieces. Hope was dragged away, but she did not struggle, did not cry. She only bowed her head, her steps heavy, her white wedding dress dragging on the cold ground like a mourning cloth. Every step she took was an unspoken confession, a series of mistakes flashing through her mind. The nights she'd spent with Finn, the lies she'd told Liam, the tears she'd shed to hide the truth. She no longer knew what she was trying to protect: love, or the illusion of a woman who had lost herself. Liam didn't move. His mind was a jumble of images: Hope holding him, Hope promising never to betray her, Hope smiling about the child he'd once believed was hers. Now, each memory felt like a dagger stuck in his heart. Everything he'd done to keep their marriage together had been for a perfectly orchestrated, cruel play. As the police closed the car door, Liam realized his hands were shaking. He'd lived for Hope, believed in Hope, and now she was the one who'd set his life on fire. Elsewhere, Finn sat motionless in the living room, the dim light illuminating the withered features of his face. He had lost everything: his faith, his family, his honor. He knew Steffi would never forgive. She was strong, but betrayed. That strength turned to something cold and unyielding. He remembered the moment Steffi looked at him after Luna had revealed the truth. Her eyes no longer held anger, only contempt and a lack of faith. He tried to explain, but what words could save a broken soul? Steffi stepped in, her eyes like knives, cutting through any excuses. She was no longer the gentle wife, no longer the woman who had defended her marriage against all temptation. She was now a living sentence, and Finn was the condemned one. He tried to step closer, his hands shaking, trying to grasp some remnant of the past, but Steffi backed away, each step a stab in his heart. When she said, "Go take responsibility for Hope," her voice rang out like steel against stone. Cold, resonant, and indelible, Finn knelt down, trying to say something, but Steffi didn't give him the chance. She looked straight at the man who had once been her world, then swung her hand. The slap was dry, the sound of it tearing apart the wall of silence between them. Finn's cheeks reddened, but what hurt more was Steffi's eyes devoid of love. She turned away, taking his soul with her, leaving a void where love had once been. Steffi walked out of the house, not looking back. Rain began to fall, mixing with her heavy breathing. She had thought love could redeem all mistakes, but now she understood that there were wounds that could never heal, only be cut away. She left without knowing where she was going, only knowing that if she stayed, she would be swallowed by lies. Finn stood in the shadows watching, the rain mixing with his tears, and in that moment, he understood that his downfall came not from a moment of weakness, but from the belief that he could hide the truth forever. In the cell, Hope sat silently, the cold neon light illuminating her tired face. She heard the sound of police boots outside, heard whispers calling her name as if she were dead and not yet buried. Her hands still smelled of wedding perfume, the smell of what should have been a happy day. But all that remained was ashes. She thought of the baby in her belly, of Finn, of Liam, of the string of mistakes that had dragged her down. And in a fragile moment, she felt the baby move, a small pulse of life in the thick darkness. Outside, the newspapers flooded in. Images of Hope handcuffed were everywhere. Cold headlines. Bride arrested on wedding day. Whose baby is Hope's? Finn lost everything. The news spread faster than the truth, and public opinion began to dissect, condemn, and smear. Steffi became the betrayed woman, Hope the sinner, and Finn the man who lost his soul. Everything became a big play, where everyone knew their part but no one knew how it would end. Liam, in the now empty house, sat looking at the unfinished wedding photo on the table. The flickering candlelight reflected Hope's smiling face. He remembered the day she said they would start over, that all mistakes could be forgiven. Now, he saw those words as just a crack in the collapsed wall. He didn't know if he still believed in love, only that his trust was dead. He threw the photo frame down, the glass shattered, and in the shards, he saw himself, a man who believed too much and lost everything. The night scene gradually fell silent, only the sound of rain hitting the glass like a devastated heartbeat. Finn walked into the hospital, where he had been a savior, now just a victim. All eyes followed him, half pity, half contempt. He walked through the hallway, saw Steffi leaving, small suitcase in hand, not looking back. He wanted to run after them, but his legs wouldn't listen. He understood that any apology would only deepen the wound. That night, for people who had once been bound together by love and trust were now scattered like broken glass. Hope was alone in her cell, Liam was lost in silence, Finn was adrift in sin, and Steffi carried a wound that would never heal. Love was dead, but its consequences still lived, lingering, bleeding every day, in the darkness.